The year was 2278, and humanity had achieved what once seemed impossible, unity among its nations. For centuries, the planet had been plagued by division, greed, and war. Yet, nothing unified a species like an external threat. The galactic community, a collective of alien civilizations that humanity had only recently joined, decided that humans were too chaotic, too dangerous, and too unpredictable to coexist peacefully. A coalition of alien species declared war on Earth, stating that humanity's propensity for violence made them a threat to galactic stability. At first, humanity tried to negotiate. Diplomats from Earth's United Council reached out, pleading for peace, explaining that their violent history was behind them. But the coalition's leaders had seen enough. Recordings of human wars, their brutality, and their reckless ingenuity painted a horrifying picture. To the aliens, humans weren't just another civilization, they were a virus, a species whose unchecked aggression could destabilize the entire galaxy. The first attacks came swiftly and mercilessly. Orbital bombardments devastated Earth's surface, leaving cities in ruins and billions dead. The alien coalition expected humanity to crumble, to surrender. What they didn't expect was the sheer ferocity of the human response. The regular forces rise. In the face of annihilation, humanity revealed its greatest strength, adaptability. Nations that had once been rivals combined their resources, pooling their military expertise. Armies, navies, and air forces merged into the Earth Defense Forces, EDF, a single, cohesive fighting force with one purpose, survival. The soldiers of the EDF, later dubbed the Regular Forces, were unlike anything the alien coalition had ever encountered. Where most species approached warfare with rigid strategies and reliance on advanced technology, humans thrived on unpredictability. They adapted to alien tactics with alarming speed, turning every defeat into a lesson and every victory into a stepping stone. One such instance occurred during the Battle of Io. An alien fleet had established a stronghold on Jupiter's moon, cutting off vital supply lines to Earth's outer colonies. The EDF's regular forces were deployed, equipped with outdated ships and weaponry, compared to the coalition's advanced arsenal. On paper, it was a suicide mission. Yet, through sheer ingenuity, the human soldiers turned the tide. They used the moon's volcanic terrain to their advantage, laying traps and ambushes that the alien commanders couldn't anticipate. Human engineers rigged crude explosives from mining equipment, while infantry units executed flanking maneuvers that defied all logic. By the end of the battle, the alien fleet was in retreat, their forces in disarray. This pattern repeated itself across the solar system. Time and time again, the regular forces proved that humanity was not to be underestimated. Soldiers fought with a level of tenacity that alien species simply couldn't comprehend. Where an alien soldier might retreat when outnumbered, a human would dig in, using every resource at their disposal to turn the situation in their favor. The psychological factor. Beyond their tactics and technology, there was something else that made the regular forces so terrifying: their psychological resilience. Human soldiers had an uncanny ability to endure the horrors of war, both physically and mentally. While alien troops often broke under the pressure of prolonged battles, humans seemed to thrive on adversity. One account from a captured alien officer highlighted this perfectly. During a skirmish on Mars, the officer had witnessed a squad of regular forces pinned down under heavy fire. Rather than retreat, the humans laughed, cracking jokes as they fought. When reinforcements arrived, they launched a counterattack with such ferocity that the alien lines crumbled within minutes. "They are mad," the officer had said during interrogation. "No fear. No hesitation. Even when they bleed, they smile." This reputation spread throughout the galaxy, and soon, the very sight of human soldiers became a source of terror for alien troops. Stories of their resilience and ingenuity grew into legends, with many aliens believing that humans were biologically predisposed to war. Unity in adversity. The war also brought about a profound change within humanity itself. For the first time in history, there were no nationalities, no borders, only humans. Soldiers fought not for their countries, but for their species. Scientists and engineers worked tirelessly to develop new technologies, while civilians rallied to support the war effort. This unity extended beyond the battlefield. Artists, writers, and philosophers began to create works that celebrated the human spirit, reminding everyone of what they were fighting for. It wasn't just survival, it was the preservation of their culture, their identity, and their future. Among the most celebrated pieces was a poem written by an anonymous soldier, found etched into a bunker wall after a battle. "We are the storm that cannot be tamed. The fire that burns eternal. We rise from the ashes, unbroken. For we are humanity, unstoppable, unyielding, unconquerable." The turning point. By the end of the first year of the war, the regular forces had not only survived, they had pushed the coalition back. Alien commanders, once confident in their superiority, began to fear the humans. They couldn't understand how a species so disorganized and chaotic could pose such a threat. But for humanity, this was only the beginning. As impressive as the regular forces were, it became clear that there were limits to what even they could achieve. Certain missions, deep strikes behind enemy lines, sabotage operations, and covert extractions, required more than just bravery and determination. And so, the seeds for the next evolution of human warfare were planted. The regular forces had proven that humanity was a force to be reckoned with, but what came next would solidify their place in history as the galaxy's most feared species. The regular forces had proven their worth, but humanity was far from out of danger. For every battle won, there were countless more where the odds seemed insurmountable. The alien coalition, now aware of humanity's ferocity, began to adjust their strategies. Their commanders deployed highly advanced units, fortified their bases with impenetrable defenses, and created traps that no ordinary soldier could overcome. It became clear that while the regular forces were undeniably formidable, they weren't enough for certain missions. Humanity needed something more, a group that could take on the impossible. The need for the extraordinary. During a high-level meeting of Earth's United Council and the Earth Defense Forces, EDF, commanders, the idea for the Special Forces was born. General Arya Cole, a decorated leader and one of the masterminds behind the EDF strategies, presented the concept. "We've seen what our regular forces can achieve. They've done the unimaginable, but there are tasks even they cannot complete. We need a unit trained not just for war, but for the most dangerous, precise, and critical missions imaginable. Missions where failure isn't an option. This unit won't just fight battles, they'll win wars before they even begin." The proposal was met with skepticism. Humanity was already stretched thin, its resources focused on maintaining the regular forces and rebuilding devastated colonies. Training a new unit, let alone one requiring specialized equipment and techniques, seemed like a gamble. But General Cole was relentless. "Imagine a team capable of infiltrating an alien stronghold undetected, disabling their defenses, and paving the way for our forces. Imagine warriors who can outthink, outmaneuver, and outfight anything the coalition throws at us. We don't just need soldiers, we need specialists." Reluctantly, the council approved the initiative, allocating a small but elite group of scientists, trainers, and engineers to the project. The selection process. The first challenge was identifying candidates for the program. From the millions of soldiers in the regular forces, only a handful could meet the criteria. These individuals needed more than just physical prowess, they required exceptional mental acuity, adaptability, and an unbreakable will. The selection process was brutal. Potential recruits were subjected to a series of grueling tests designed to push them to their limits. They were dropped into simulated battlefields with no supplies, forced to survive and complete objectives against impossible odds. They were interrogated and subjected to psychological stress to ensure they could resist alien mind control tactics. One candidate, Captain Elias Kane, famously survived 72 hours in a simulated alien detention facility. When asked how he endured, he simply replied, "They wanted me to break. So I smiled." From an initial pool of 10,000 candidates, only 50 were selected. These individuals would become the first generation of the Special Forces, nicknamed the Ghosts for their ability to operate unseen and unheard. Training the best of the best. The training regimen for the Special Forces made the selection process look like a warm-up. Recruits were exposed to cutting-edge technology and tactics, undergoing advanced combat simulations that mimicked the alien coalition's strategies. They learned to pilot experimental vehicles, use alien weaponry, and even adapt to environments with extreme conditions, from zero-gravity operations to toxic atmospheres. Their training wasn't limited to combat. Each recruit was required to specialize in a field: engineering, linguistics, espionage, or cyber warfare. They became experts in understanding alien biology and technology, allowing them to exploit weaknesses the regular forces couldn't. To instill unity and loyalty, the recruits lived and trained together in total isolation. Bonds were forged in fire, creating a team that operated as a single entity. "You don't just train a soldier," General Cole said. "You forge a weapon." The first mission. The Ghost's first mission came sooner than expected. The Coalition had established a massive fortress on the asteroid Ceres, using it as a staging ground for their fleets. The EDF knew that a direct assault would be suicide, but if the fortress could be disabled, humanity would have a fighting chance to reclaim the asteroid belt. The mission parameters were clear: infiltrate the fortress, disable its shield generators, and escape before the EDF launched a full-scale assault. It was a task no regular unit could hope to accomplish. The Ghosts, clad in advanced adaptive armor and equipped with prototype stealth technology, approached the asteroid undetected. They navigated its treacherous surface, avoiding patrols and automated defenses, until they reached the fortress. Inside, they encountered the unexpected, a new alien species, designed as living weapons. These creatures were faster, stronger, and deadlier than anything the Coalition had deployed before. But the Ghosts didn't falter. Using their training and technology, they outmaneuvered the aliens, exploiting their lack of experience with human unpredictability. The shield generators were destroyed in a series of coordinated strikes, and the Ghosts escaped just as EDF forces arrived to finish the job. The mission was a resounding success, and for the first time, humanity saw the potential of its new warriors. The legend grows. Word of the Ghosts spread quickly. To the regular forces, they were heroes, symbols of humanity's indomitable spirit. To the Coalition, they became something else entirely: nightmares. Alien commanders began issuing orders to prioritize the capture or elimination of the Special Forces, but no one ever succeeded. Over time, the Special Forces began to take on missions that went beyond the battlefield. They sabotaged supply lines, intercepted enemy communications, and even infiltrated alien high command. Each success further cemented their reputation as humanity's ultimate weapon. A new era of warfare. With the Special Forces in play, humanity's war strategy evolved. The regular forces continued to hold the line, engaging in large-scale battles, while the Ghosts operated in the shadows, striking at the Coalition's weakest points. Together, they formed a deadly combination, one that the Coalition struggled to counter. The Ghosts' existence also inspired the regular forces, pushing them to strive for even greater heights. Soldiers began to see the Special Forces not as replacements, but as an extension of their own efforts. Humanity was no longer fighting as individuals or nations, it was fighting as one. The Special Forces had been born out of necessity, but they became a symbol of what humanity could achieve when pushed to its limits. They weren't just soldiers, they were the embodiment of human ingenuity, resilience, and determination. Infiltration. The Ghosts would land on the outskirts of the city, avoiding detection by alien sensors. They would need to infiltrate the city undetected, avoiding patrols and surveillance systems. Sabotage. Once inside, they would plant EMP devices throughout key infrastructure points to disable communication lines, disrupt enemy radar, and disable the defense grid for a limited time. The message: after disabling the grid, the team would broadcast a message to the galaxy. A simple phrase, but one that would echo across the universe: humanity will not kneel. Exfiltration, the hardest part. With the grid down and the message sent, the team would need to escape Kreenox Prime before the aliens could regain control of their systems. The plan seemed like madness, but that was exactly what made it brilliant. It wasn't about fighting on the aliens' terms, it was about making them fight on humanity's terms. The ghosts in the shadows. The special forces made their way to Kreenox Prime under the cover of night, using specialized stealth technology to evade detection. Their transport, a cloaked stealth ship, slipped past the planet's atmosphere, unnoticed by the alien defenses. As they descended onto the barren outskirts of the capital, the ghosts moved with precision, each step calculated. They made use of the planet's natural terrain, using rocky outcrops and hidden passages to avoid alien patrols. Their adaptive camouflage made them nearly invisible, but it was their silence and discipline that kept them out of sight. Captain Elias Kane led the squad, his eyes constantly scanning the environment for any signs of danger. Beside him, Sergeant Lila Fenn worked to disable the alien surveillance systems, using a handheld device to hack into the network and provide the team with the necessary blind spots. They passed through the darkened streets, avoiding the alien guards who marched in mechanical rhythms. The city felt lifeless, yet there was an undercurrent of tension in the air, as if the very planet knew it was about to face something it could not predict. The ghosts made their way to the central communication tower, a massive, looming structure that controlled the planet's entire defense grid. This was the heart of the alien stronghold, and if they could disable it, they would cripple the coalition's operations for weeks. A mission on the brink of failure. With only minutes to spare, the team reached the heart of the communication tower. However, their presence had not gone entirely undetected. Alien scouts, alerted by the disruption in their surveillance system, began to swarm the area. The ghosts knew they didn't have much time. They planted the EMP charges, setting the countdown. But just as they were about to transmit the message, an alarm sounded. Alien forces were closing in. The team was about to be overwhelmed. For a brief moment, panic set in, something that none of the ghosts had ever allowed themselves to feel. But Captain Kane snapped them back into focus. "We don't leave anyone behind," he said, his voice calm despite the chaos around them. The squad, instinctively following his lead, fought their way through the oncoming alien forces. The EMP devices detonated, sending a massive shockwave through the alien systems. Communication lines were severed, and the defensive grid went dark. The ghosts had done their job. But the real challenge was escaping the planet. The special forces were surrounded. Their cloaking devices had been compromised, and now they were visible targets. The message was sent, though, broadcasting to the stars. Humanity will not kneel. Escape against all odds. As the alien forces advanced, the special forces fought through the streets, using every trick they knew to stay one step ahead of their enemies. They used distractions, made feints, and even blew up parts of the city to create confusion. With the grid down, the aliens were blind. But time was running out. The ghosts reached their extraction point, just as reinforcements arrived. The cloaked transport ship waited above the planet's atmosphere, ready to pick them up. With seconds to spare, the squad boarded the ship, leaving the burning ruins of Kreenox Prime behind. The mission had been a success, though the cost was high. The special forces had managed to send a message across the galaxy, one that would echo through alien minds for years to come. Humanity was a force to be reckoned with. The ghosts had proven that even the impossible could be done when humanity's elite warriors took the field. The success of the Kreenox Prime mission was a turning point in the war, a bold reminder to the alien coalition that humanity was not to be underestimated. But as the special forces returned from their harrowing escape, it became clear that their most powerful weapon was not their advanced technology or training, it was their mind. In the heat of battle, while others might be swayed by fear, fatigue, or doubt, the ghosts exhibited a level of psychological resilience that went beyond mere toughness. It wasn't just that they didn't break, it was that they thrived in the most impossible situations. The strength of their mental fortitude became their defining characteristic, and it was something the alien forces had not anticipated. Humanity's greatest strength wasn't physical, though they were undeniably strong, it was their unshakable determination and adaptability. And the special forces embodied that spirit to its fullest. The mind of a ghost. For the soldiers of the special forces, every mission was a test of mental endurance. Their training had prepared them to face overwhelming odds, to endure hardship, and to maintain their focus even when it seemed like the universe itself was conspiring against them. Captain Elias Kane, the leader of the Ghosts, was the perfect example of this psychological toughness. A man who had once been a normal soldier in the regular forces, Kane had been forged in the fires of combat. His ability to stay calm under pressure was legendary, and his tactical brilliance in high-stress situations had earned him the respect of his peers and enemies alike. But it wasn't just his battlefield acumen that made him special, it was his ability to compartmentalize, to turn off his emotions when the situation demanded it, and to make the hardest decisions without hesitation. When asked what kept him going in the most perilous situations, he answered with a simple phrase, "I know what's at stake." The Ghosts were more than just soldiers, they were humans who understood the stakes of the war on a level few others could comprehend. They had seen what happened when humanity faltered. They had seen their world burn, their people suffer, and their future hang in the balance. That knowledge stayed with them, driving them forward even when every instinct told them to retreat. Psychologists and military strategists alike began studying the special forces, trying to understand what made them tick. It wasn't just their training or their physical prowess. There was something deeper at play. The Ghosts had developed a unique mental resilience that allowed them to push past fear, pain, and exhaustion, something the aliens didn't possess. One of the key elements was their ability to reframe failure. In war, no plan ever survives contact with the enemy. The special forces had learned to view every setback not as a failure, but as an opportunity to adapt and learn. Failure didn't demoralize them, it sharpened them. The same couldn't be said for the alien forces. While they were technologically superior, they lacked the human ability to rebound quickly from setbacks. The alien reaction. As the Ghosts' legend grew, so did the fear they instilled in the alien coalition. These elite human soldiers seemed to be everywhere, their presence a signal that humanity could strike at any time, anywhere. Alien leaders began to view the special forces not as a tactical threat, but as a psychological one. The aliens, being a species governed by logic and order, were not accustomed to fighting against an enemy that didn't follow the same rules. The Ghosts didn't operate within the predictable bounds of military engagement. They didn't always fight fair, nor did they honor the same codes of war. To the aliens, the Ghosts were an anomaly, something that could not be understood or anticipated. In many ways, the psychological warfare waged by humanity was as devastating as any battle. The Ghosts had a knack for getting into the minds of their enemies, creating an atmosphere of paranoia and fear. They would infiltrate alien strongholds, spread misinformation, and sabotage key infrastructure in ways that kept their opponents off balance. By the time the coalition could react, the damage had already been done. One particularly famous incident involved a psychological operation carried out by the special forces on a distant moon. The Ghosts had infiltrated a secret alien research facility and planted false intelligence, leading the aliens to believe they were under attack from a rival faction. The aliens, unable to cope with the psychological pressure of an unknown enemy, turned on each other in a frenzy of paranoia. As one alien commander later put it during interrogation, "We could feel them watching us. But we could never find them. We heard their whispers in our heads. And we turned on each other." This kind of psychological manipulation was alien to the coalition. They had never faced an enemy that could fight not just with weapons, but with fear. The special forces were becoming a weapon of mass psychological destruction, exploiting weaknesses in the coalition's unity, morale, and trust. The Ghosts' resilience under fire. In battle, the special forces were often outnumbered, outgunned, and in enemy territory. But they always fought with a singular focus, the mission. Unlike most soldiers, who were driven by duty or national pride, the Ghosts were motivated by something deeper. They fought for their families, for their planet, for the future of their species. Every fight was personal. and that made them nearly unstoppable. The Ghosts were united by a bond forged in battle, one that transcended the typical hierarchical structure of military units. They fought not for orders or commands, but for each other. This sense of camaraderie was another psychological advantage, one that the aliens couldn't replicate. For the Ghosts, there was no such thing as impossible. Every situation, no matter how dire, was an opportunity to adapt, to outthink, and to outlast. The mind was their greatest weapon, and it allowed them to survive when others would have perished. In one notable mission, the Special Forces were deployed on an enemy flagship that was well guarded and virtually indestructible. The alien coalition had fortified it with the best defenses available. A direct assault would have been futile. But the Ghosts had a plan. They infiltrated the flagship, disguised as alien officers, and slowly began to sow distrust among the crew. They leaked false information, turned factions against each other, and subtly undermined the command structure. By the time the alien fleet attempted to engage the EDF, their flagship was in chaos. The crew had lost all cohesion, and the ship was disabled from the inside. The Ghosts never fired a shot, but they had turned the tide of the battle before it even began. The mind games with the coalition. As the war dragged on, the Special Forces continued to exploit the psychological warfare against the coalition, increasingly making them question every move they made. Alien leaders, once confident in their superiority, began to make mistakes. Their strategies faltered, and their soldiers began to break under the pressure. The psychological war became just as important as the physical one. The Special Forces' ability to destabilize the coalition's mental state was one of the key factors that shifted the balance of the war. The alien forces, unable to predict the human mind, were left scrambling, unsure of how to counter an enemy that didn't play by the rules of engagement. The Special Forces had become more than just warriors, they were the embodiment of humanity's greatest psychological weapon. They had proven that humans, despite their imperfections, could adapt, endure, and survive. And in the end, it was their minds that made the difference. As the war between humanity and the alien coalition continued to rage across the galaxy, one thing became clear: while humanity's special forces were a formidable weapon, their true strength lay in their ability to unite in the face of unimaginable adversity. The Ghosts were not only exceptional warriors, they were a living testament to the power of solidarity, trust, and sacrifice. The mission to Kreenox Prime, their legendary infiltration and sabotage operation, had shown the world what humanity was capable of. But as the war progressed, it became apparent that no single force could win this battle alone. The conflict had grown too large, too complex, and too destructive. If humanity was to stand a chance, it would need to unite all its resources, all its people, in a single, unified effort. The Ghosts and the regular forces. The Special Forces had gained a reputation as the elite, the unrelenting, and the nearly invincible. Their missions were whispered about in awe across the EDF, Earth Defense Forces, and beyond. But as their exploits grew, so did the divide between them and the regular forces, the standard military personnel who made up the bulk of humanity's fighting force. The regulars were often seen as the backbone of the EDF. They fought valiantly, day in and day out, in conventional battles across the galaxy. They followed orders, stood firm in the face of overwhelming opposition, and provided the necessary manpower for larger operations. They were disciplined, courageous, and dedicated, but they were also human, subject to the same doubts, fears, and failures that plagued every soldier. The Special Forces, in contrast, had become something almost mythical. The Ghosts were revered as the best of humanity, their training and skills far beyond anything the regulars could hope to achieve. The Ghosts were seen as untouchable, almost otherworldly in their abilities. But this created a rift. Regular forces soldiers felt they were often left behind or overshadowed by the Ghosts, and many felt their efforts were undervalued. Despite this, the Special Forces and the regulars were often forced to work together, with the Ghosts leading elite missions while the regular forces provided support and logistical assistance. But even in these collaborative efforts, there was tension. Regulars knew they weren't equipped to fight on the same level as the Ghosts, But they still had to work alongside them, sometimes in life or death situations. The sense of inferiority was palpable, and many regulars began to feel like they were being sidelined. But in the face of a greater threat, humanity would need to reconcile its divisions. The future of the war would not be decided by the strength of any one faction, but by the unity of all humanity. The special forces would have to learn to integrate with the regular forces, not as superiors, but as comrades. The catalyst for unity. The turning point came during the Siege of Gorgoth, an alien stronghold located on the frontier of the galaxy. The planet had long been a symbol of the alien coalition's power, and it had resisted every attempt by the EDF to breach its defenses. The alien forces had constructed a massive network of fortifications, powered by a hyper-efficient energy core that kept their shields and weapons running at full capacity. The EDF needed a strategy to break the stalemate. But the special forces, despite their brilliance, were not enough. The problem was too large for even the ghosts to tackle alone. The regular forces were called in to support the operation, but a deep sense of skepticism and rivalry lingered. General Arya Cole, a respected leader who had fought alongside the ghosts since the early days of the war, understood that the key to victory wouldn't be in their weapons or tactics, it would be in their ability to come together, as one force. She issued an unprecedented order: the special forces and regular forces would be integrated into a single unit. No more hierarchy, no more division, just humanity, working together. At first, there was resistance. The regulars were hesitant to follow orders from the ghosts, and the ghosts struggled to work within the framework of a larger, less specialized force. But as the first wave of the siege began, it quickly became clear that only through unity could humanity hope to overcome the insurmountable odds. The Siege of Gorgoth. The special forces led the initial assault on Gorgoth, slipping past the outer defenses and securing the perimeter of the planet's main fortress. But as they advanced, they encountered unexpected resistance from the alien defenders, forces that seemed almost ready for them, as if they knew the ghosts were coming. This was where the regular forces came into play. While the ghosts were busy securing the perimeter, the regulars moved in to bolster their position, using their numbers to press forward and hold key locations. The ghosts' stealth and precision were complemented by the regulars' relentless, no-frills combat strategies. Together, they created a synergy that neither force could have achieved alone. As the siege progressed, the regulars and ghosts began to form a true partnership. Regulars provided the necessary manpower to breach the alien bunkers, while the ghosts used their superior tactics to disable the energy core that powered the entire fortress. The teamwork between the two factions was slow to develop, but ultimately proved successful. By the time the last of the alien defenders were routed, General Cole stood before the soldiers, both regulars and ghosts, who had brought the victory. "This," she said, "is what humanity is capable of when we stand together. We are not invincible. But together, we are unstoppable." The aftermath of Gorgoth. The success of the Siege of Gorgoth marked a new chapter in the war. The alien coalition, already reeling from multiple setbacks, now found themselves facing a united human front. The ghosts, once seen as separate from the regular forces, were now integrated into larger units, working side by side with those they had once considered their lesser counterparts. The integration was not seamless, it took time, effort, and a willingness to accept that each soldier, whether elite or regular, had something vital to contribute. But the battlefield had become the crucible in which old animosities and divisions were burned away. In their place, a new form of unity had emerged. For the ghosts, this was a humbling experience. They had always believed in the superiority of their training, their precision, and their extraordinary capabilities. But in the heat of battle, they had come to understand that strength wasn't just about individual prowess, it was about collective effort. They had learned that even the best warriors could be outlasted by a well-organized, determined army of regulars. And for the regulars, this was a chance to prove their worth. They were no longer the lesser force, relegated to support roles. They were an essential part of the war effort, equal in stature to the ghosts, and capable of making a decisive impact on the battlefield. The end of divisions. As the war continued, humanity's unity became the driving force behind every victory. The special forces and the regular forces fought as one, pushing back the alien coalition on every front. The ghosts, once seen as untouchable, now fought not as individuals, but as part of something much greater than themselves. The regulars, in turn, had learned to work with the ghosts, not with resentment or envy, but with respect. Together, humanity was proving that it could overcome anything: alien invaders, division, and even its own limitations. The war was far from over, but the lessons of unity had already been learned. The war had dragged on for years, but with every victory, humanity had come closer to reclaiming its destiny. The coalition of alien forces, once a seemingly unstoppable threat, had begun to fragment, unable to cope with the relentless pressure from the united human front. Humanity's special forces, now fully integrated with the regular forces, were no longer just fighting for survival, they were fighting for the future of the galaxy. The siege of Gorgoth had marked the turning of the tide, but the final battle was still ahead. The alien coalition's stronghold, a massive, heavily fortified space station known as the Pinnacle, remained their last major defense. If humanity could breach the Pinnacle, the war would be over. If not, the alien forces would regroup, and the conflict would continue for years to come. The last bastion of the alien coalition. The Pinnacle was an engineering marvel, a station that orbited a dying star on the outskirts of the galaxy. Its construction had taken centuries, and its defenses were unlike anything humanity had ever encountered. Thousands of alien soldiers, fleets of starships, and advanced weapons systems were stationed there, and the station was protected by an impenetrable energy shield powered by the star itself. However, despite the odds, the special forces and regulars knew this was their last chance to end the war. The Pinnacle had become the symbol of the alien coalition's power, and its destruction would not only break their military might, it would shatter their will to fight. General Cole had one final plan, a desperate but brilliant strategy that would require every ounce of humanity's ingenuity, courage, and unity. The attack would involve all aspects of the EDF, from the elite special forces to the regular forces, and even the civilian resistance movements that had risen to fight alongside the military. It would be a combined effort unlike anything the galaxy had ever seen. The plan of attack. The attack on the Pinnacle would not be a conventional assault. The ghosts had become masters of infiltration and deception, and they would use those skills to sneak into the heart of the station, disable its defenses, and allow the regular forces to press the attack. But it would not be easy. First, the special forces would infiltrate the Pinnacle's outer defenses using stealth technology and cloaking devices. Their mission was to disable the energy shields protecting the station. Without the shields, the regular forces could bring their full firepower to bear on the station, breaking its outer defenses and opening a path for the final assault. The regular forces would provide the main bulk of the attack, focusing on the destruction of key infrastructure once the shields were down. Their numbers would overwhelm the alien defenders, who would be stretched thin, trying to protect the core of the station. The war had dragged on for years, but with every victory, humanity had come closer to reclaiming its destiny. The coalition of alien forces, once a seemingly unstoppable threat, had begun to fragment, unable to cope with the relentless pressure from the united human front. Humanity's special forces, now fully integrated with the regular forces, were no longer just fighting for survival, they were fighting for the future of the galaxy. The siege of Gorgoth had marked the turning of the tide, but the final battle was still ahead. The alien coalition's stronghold, a massive, heavily fortified space station known as the Pinnacle, remained their last major defense. If humanity could breach the Pinnacle, the war would be over. If not, the alien forces would regroup, and the conflict would continue for years to come. The last bastion of the alien coalition. The Pinnacle was an engineering marvel, a station that orbited a dying star on the outskirts of the galaxy. Its construction had taken centuries, and its defenses were unlike anything humanity had ever encountered. Thousands of alien soldiers, fleets of starships, and advanced weapons systems were stationed there, and the station was protected by an impenetrable energy shield powered by the star itself. However, despite the odds, the Special Forces and regulars knew this was their last chance to end the war. The Pinnacle had become the symbol of the alien coalition's power, and its destruction would not only break their military might, it would shatter their will to fight. General Cole had one final plan, a desperate but brilliant strategy that would require every ounce of humanity's ingenuity, courage, and unity. The attack would involve all aspects of the EDF, from the elite special forces to the regular forces, and even the civilian resistance movements that had risen to fight alongside the military. It would be a combined effort unlike anything the galaxy had ever seen. The plan of attack. The attack on the Pinnacle would not be a conventional assault. The Ghosts had become masters of infiltration and deception, and they would use those skills to sneak into the heart of the station, disable its defenses, and allow the regular forces to press the attack. But it would not be easy. First, the Special Forces would infiltrate the Pinnacle's outer defenses using stealth technology and cloaking devices. Their mission was to disable the energy shields protecting the station. Without the shields, the regular forces could bring their full firepower to bear on the station, breaking its outer defenses and opening a path for the final assault. The regular forces would provide the main bulk of the attack, focusing on the destruction of key infrastructure once the shields were down. Their numbers would overwhelm the alien defenders, who would be stretched thin, trying to protect the core of the station. Meanwhile, the civilian resistance groups, composed of skilled engineers, hackers, and former soldiers, would work in parallel to disrupt the alien communications and coordinate ground-level sabotage. The Special Forces' role, however, was to create chaos from within. They would infiltrate the command center, plant explosives, and sabotage critical systems. They would also sow confusion among the alien leaders, planting false intelligence to fracture their decision-making. But General Cole knew that success hinged on something more than just tactics. This final battle would be the ultimate test of humanity's unity. If the Ghosts and the regulars worked as one, the aliens would be defeated. If not, it would be the last battle for humanity. The final infiltration. The operation began with an incredible feat of stealth. The Special Forces, using advanced cloaking technology and decoy tactics, bypassed the first line of defenses around the Pinnacle. They moved like shadows, unseen and undetected, infiltrating the station's outer perimeter. The path ahead was fraught with danger, but their years of training and experience had prepared them for this moment. Captain Elias Kane led the charge. His mind was sharp, his instincts honed by years of war. He and his team had faced impossible odds before, but this mission was different. There would be no second chances. The fate of humanity rested on their success. With pinpoint precision, the Special Forces disabled the outer energy shields. The alien defenders had no idea they were being infiltrated until it was too late. The moment the shields fell, the regular forces, now ready to strike, unleashed a full-scale assault on the Pinnacle. The alien forces scrambled to respond, but their communications had been disrupted by the civilian resistance. The defenders were thrown into disarray, unable to coordinate their efforts. The human forces pushed forward with relentless determination. The battle within the Pinnacle. Inside the Pinnacle, the Ghosts worked tirelessly to sabotage the core of the station. They planted explosives in key locations, disabling the main reactors and power sources. At the same time, they targeted the alien command center, where the leaders of the coalition were holed up, giving orders. The battle raged on both inside and outside the Pinnacle. The regular forces clashed with the alien defenders, pushing them back into the core of the station. The civilians provided invaluable support, using their hacking skills to infiltrate the alien systems and disrupt their tactical advantage. Every human, no matter their role, was a critical part of the mission. Meanwhile, the Ghosts moved through the labyrinthine corridors of the station with surgical precision, picking off alien soldiers one by one. They left nothing to chance, and their efforts paid off when they reached the alien command center. A tense standoff ensued as they confronted the alien leaders, who were desperate to maintain control. "Your war is over," Kane said, his voice cold but resolute. "Your forces have been beaten. The Pinnacle is ours." The alien commanders, realizing they had been betrayed by their own systems and leadership, were left with no option but to surrender. The station was on the brink of collapse, and the once feared alien coalition was crumbling. The fall of the pinnacle. The destruction of the pinnacle was swift and decisive. Once the core of the station had been breached, the combined forces of the special forces, regular forces, and civilian resistance worked together to ensure that the station would never function again. The alien fleet, already in disarray from earlier defeats, was unable to respond in time. With the final explosion, the pinnacle erupted in a massive fireball, sending shockwaves across the galaxy. The alien forces were left in disarray, their once great military command shattered. The war was finally over. The victory, however, came at a cost. Many lives were lost in the final assault, and the scars of war would remain for generations. But as the smoke cleared and humanity looked out over the debris of their enemy's empire, there was a sense of accomplishment, of something greater achieved. Humanity had proven that they could stand united in the face of overwhelming odds. The special forces and the regular forces had fought side by side, and together they had brought an end to the war. The story of their unity would echo through the ages, a lesson for future generations that when humanity stood together, nothing could break them. The war had come to an end, but humanity's struggle was far from over. The ashes of the alien coalition lay scattered across the galaxy, and the victory was a bittersweet one. The survivors of the final push, the ghosts, the regular forces, and the civilian resistance, were left to pick up the pieces and rebuild a fractured world. Yet, amidst the rubble of the old order, a new dawn began to rise, one that promised hope, unity, and a future that had once seemed impossible. The destruction of the pinnacle had shattered the alien coalition's military might, but the war had left deep scars on humanity. The battle had cost lives, and entire colonies had been lost. Families mourned their fallen, and soldiers returned home haunted by the ghosts of the battlefield. The victory, though hard-earned, had come with a price. Rebuilding the galactic order. The first task after the war was to restore order to the galaxy. The special forces, once considered separate from the larger military effort, now took their place as key figures in the rebuilding process. They had earned the trust and respect of the regular forces, and together they set to work rebuilding the shattered infrastructure of humanity's colonies. General Arya Cole, now a hero to her people, took charge of the newly formed Unity Council, a governing body that would oversee the restoration of peace and the reconstruction of the galaxy. The council was a diverse group, composed of military leaders, diplomats, and civilian leaders, with the goal of creating a system that would prevent the rise of another empire like the alien coalition. The first order of business was to establish a new, unified military force, one that would combine the elite capabilities of the special forces with the strength and endurance of the regular forces. It was a force that valued unity over hierarchy, one where every soldier, no matter their background, would have a voice. This was humanity's new path forward, a galaxy built not on the shoulders of a few, but on the collective efforts of all. Healing the wounds of war. Despite the victory, the wounds of war ran deep. The survivors, both military and civilian, had witnessed horrors that would never be erased. The scars of battle were etched in their hearts and minds, and the process of healing would take years, if not generations. The soldiers who had fought alongside the ghosts, the regular troops who had once felt inferior, now returned home as equals, but their struggles were far from over. In every corner of the galaxy, veterans returned to their families, trying to reconcile the warriors they had become with the civilians they once were. Many struggled with the trauma of war, grappling with the loss of comrades and the toll it had taken on their spirits. The special forces, once feared and revered for their elite status, now found themselves sharing the same burdens as the regular forces. They had fought side by side, and in the aftermath, they shared the responsibility of rebuilding not only the physical world but also the emotional one. Counseling programs were set up to help the veterans cope with post-traumatic stress, and new support systems were implemented to ease the transition from war to peace. The council prioritized mental health, ensuring that no soldier, no matter their rank, would be left to face the aftermath alone. A new vision for the future. As humanity began to rebuild, the focus shifted to forging a new path for the future. The war had taught them valuable lessons, not just about their strength, but about their unity. The divisions between the special forces and the regular forces had been broken down, and the new military force was built on the foundation of mutual respect and shared purpose. But the rebuilding was not limited to just the military. The Unity Council set about dismantling the old systems of control and greed that had allowed the alien coalition to rise to power. They established new diplomatic channels between the various human colonies, aiming to create a society where cooperation, not conquest, would be the guiding principle. The civilian population, once relegated to the background of war, now had a voice in shaping the future. Engineers, scientists, and innovators from across the galaxy came together to devise solutions for energy, food, and infrastructure. The focus was on sustainability, creating a future that would never again fall into the chaos of war. Humanity also began reaching out to other species in the galaxy, offering help to those who had suffered under the alien coalition's reign. It was a bold new chapter, one that sought to heal the wounds of the past and build a future based on peace, cooperation, and shared prosperity. The ghosts in the New World. The ghosts, once a symbol of fear and legend, now found themselves taking on new roles. They were no longer just warriors, they had become the protectors of the peace. Their expertise in strategy, stealth, and tactics made them invaluable in the rebuilding process, and their reputation as elite soldiers made them the ideal candidates for the new special task forces designed to tackle the most difficult challenges of the post-war world. Captain Elias Kane, who had once led the special forces in their most dangerous missions, now took on a different mantle. He became a mentor to the next generation of soldiers, teaching them not only the art of war but the importance of unity, of working together for the greater good. The ghosts now served as a reminder that true strength was not in individual prowess, but in the collective effort of all. The ghosts also helped train new leaders, not just in the military, but in diplomacy and governance. They became a symbol of the new era, a group that had once been separate but had learned the importance of collaboration and mutual respect. The role of the regulars.